Hey, how's everyone doing? My name's Stafford McQuarrie, and this is my individual discussion presentation. And so, before I start, I'd like to apologize. I'm currently at the Starbucks parking lot because this is the only place I have Wi Fi right now. I'm about uh, an hour away from home. So, this is the only place where I have Wi Fi where I can really do this presentation. But with that being said, I'll get started. So, the story that I am doing my presentation about is the Muslim woman, the power of images and the danger of pity. So before I start, I'd like to talk about the layout of how I'm going to do this. So what I'm going to do is go over um, the main point. Then after I go over the main point, then I'll talk about it and I'll summarize it, and then I'll go over some of my opinions about it, and I'll do that for all three of them. And at the end, I'll have some discussion questions for everyone to go over. But the cool thing I like about this textbook is that it gives people's opinions about certain topics and stuff, and it creates a lot of room for individuals to create their own opinions, and it's not completely biased to where you know they're not saying this is completely true, but this is their thoughts, and I really like that. So before I go over the first main point, I'd like to go over something that was said in the first couple sentences, and it says, "Our lives, our lives are saturated with images that are strangely confined to a very limited set of tropes or themes." And I really like this because we often make assumptions off of others based off of media and news sources without knowing what is truly true or what it is truly about. You know, it's really hard to grasp the full story of what's going on and to have a true understanding of what it is we're learning about or reading about because the full information isn't always there. The best way to get the information that you need, I feel like, is having a personal conversation with the person going through that certain situation. And this passage does a really good job at like um, making this on like a more personal level, which I really liked. So the the first main point I'd like to go over is on the subsection focal point post secular Europe. So I'll go ahead and read the paragraph. These images have a long history in the West, but they have become especially visible and persistent since 9/11. Many women in the U.S. mobilized around the cause of the Afghani women oppressed by the fundamental Taliban. Women who were represented in the media as covered from head to toe in their burqas, unable to go to school or wear nail polish, and administration George W. Bush's then used the oppression of the Muslim women as part of their moral justification for the military invasion of Afghanistan. These images of veiled and oppressed women have been used to drum up support for intervention. Besides the untold horrors, dislocations, and violence these U.S. interventions have brought to the lives of the Muslim women in Afghanistan and Iraq, I would argue that the use of these images have also been bad for us in the country of the wet in the countries of the West where they circulate because of the dreading effect they have on our capacity to appreciate the complexity and diversity of Muslim women's lives as human beings. I really like this little paragraph right here because it talks about how broad the Muslim religion is, and we don't get to see a lot of it because the news only portrays one side of it, and that's one of the biggest things I liked about it. But before 9/11, there wasn't much focus on the Western countries in the Middle East, simply because there was it didn't really affect the United States much. And but after 9/11, it seems like there was a lot of focus on them for a while, and here recently after the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Uh, so another thing that I like to point out is the oppression of women in the Middle East was used for more of a moral compass to invade these countries, which is very true. Gathering up support to go attack Afghanistan and the Taliban, uh, it was very controversial. And then once the United States uh, talked about the Muslim women there that are being oppressed, it gave more of a moral compass for us to go over there and attack. Um, Another thing I'd like to point out before I go to the second point is when it talks about the Muslim woman, it talks about how it prevents us from thinking about the connections between our various parts of the world, helping setting up a civilization divide. This still is focused on uh, what the media portrays for the Muslim women, because in the Middle East they're so focused on the burqas, how their whole body's covered up to to show modesty. And I remember being in an airport, and I think the airport was one of the first places where I actually saw a Muslim woman, and she wasn't covered head to toe, and I was like really shocked by that. I was like, when I look at the news and stuff, this isn't what I've seen. That was a while back whenever that happened. But anyways, for the next point, it's in the subsection portable seclusion. So the paragraph I'm going to go over is about two down. I don't have the page numbers because I have the online textbook, but I'll try to do my best to like pinpoint to where I'm talking about. So what it says is to draw some analogies, none perfect. Why are we surprised when Afghan women don't throw off their burqas when we know perfectly well that it wouldn't be appropriate to wear shorts to the opera? Religious belief and community standards of propriety require the covering of the hair in some traditions, Muslim, Jewish, and Catholic until recently. People wear the appropriate form of dress for their social communities and are guided by socially shared standards, religious beliefs, and moral ideals, unless they are deliberately transgressed to make a point or are unable to afford proper cover. If we think that American women, even the non-religious, live in a world of choice regarding clothing, all we need to do is remind ourselves of the expression, the tyranny of fashion. So what I got from this paragraph was many of the people of of the Muslim traditions and religion, when it comes to normalizing a less modest version of the burqa, um, it would it would be seen as more controversial. Um, what I like to kind of compare it to is, stuff just doesn't happen overnight. Someone can't just change their minds on something overnight. It takes a lot of convincing. Um, a great example is gay marriages. For a while, not a lot of people supported it, and we didn't see a lot of it until a couple years later, whenever it was legalized for gay marriages. Uh, and Another thing that would be hard for the Muslim women around there is that the neighboring countries, uh, they still wore the modest head coverings in like India and Pakistan. So this one area of the Middle East weren't to wear their head coverings and kind of break away from those traditions, it would be a lot harder than it would be in the U.S., where it isn't as normal to see people wearing burqas or covering their more of their body to be seen modest. But the more modern version of the burqa would be I think it's called the hijab. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's more of what you'll see in the United States, where it's not as strict and it's not as traditional. So, for my third point, it's towards the end of the reading. It's in the subsection free choice and tradition. So it says, what is the point of these stories I am telling about particular women in the Middle East or feminists in the Muslim world? The late Susan Mahler, a well-known American liberal feminist thinker who wrote a widely publicized essay entitled "Is Multiculturalism Bad for Women?", made a statement that provoked much criticism. She proposed boldly that women in patriarchal minority cultures might be much better off if the culture into which they were born were either to become extinct or preferable, were encouraged to alter itself so as to reinforce the equality of women. And I really like this one because it made me think. It kind of surprised me that this textbook would put that in here about talking about a culture going extinct. Uh, that it creates a lot of room for thought and stuff, and it creates a different way of thinking than what the passage has been saying the whole entire time. Uh, but what I'm getting from what she is saying is that it's hard to create a different way of thinking after living a certain way for so long. So the cultures that are involved in the Muslim religion in the Middle East, they've always believed, especially in when the Taliban took over, they've always believed that burqas is a way that women should cover themselves to show that they're modest. And uh, having a culture become extinct is very hard. Um, Instead of saying extinct, I think a better word that could have been said was evolve. She kind of says at the end, um, when it talks about to alter itself. So I think to to be able to evolve the culture into something a little bit less modest, which isn't the case, but if they were to create a way to not to where the burqas aren't as normalized and isn't seen as often, which would take a lot of time. Um, I think that would be the best route. Uh, but the thing about that, I feel like the Afghanistan has a long way to go before they even consider doing that. Um, I was reading some of the articles and watching some videos about a news reporter interviewing some of the Taliban leaders, talking about uh, what do y'all think about a woman having the right to vote or a woman being able to speak their voice, and they just kind of laughed at her face, the news reporter's face. They have a long way to go for women's rights. I think so. The first thing I feel like they need to do is to have a voice in that area. So those were my three main points, but I also have some discussion questions that I'll also put at the bottom of the video. And the questions are, could you compare the oppression from the Middle East to the United States? Why or why not? And the second one is, in what ways could the Middle Eastern Muslim culture change for the better? Should it change? Why or why not? So that is all I have for this. Thank you all for listening.